This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Erin Akins with the Titusville Area Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to the 2020 St. Johns River to Sea Loop Virtual Summit. We hope everyone is healthy and well in these trying times and starting to get their life a little bit back to normal. Today's presentation will be Social Savvy, featuring Vaughn Tron with the Florida Trail Association and Abby Hemingway with the Space Coast TPO. Before we get started with today's presentation, we'd like to take a moment and recognize our partners and sponsors, whom without their support today would not be possible. The City of Titusville, Playlinda Brewing Company, Florida American Planning Association Atlantic Coast Section, Titus Landings, Lisa Mosier with Coldwell Banker Coast Realty, Wild Ocean Market, Bike Florida, Days Inn by Wyndham, Coldwell Banker Coast Realty, the Titusville Area Chamber of Commerce, St. Johns River to Sea Loop Alliance, Space Coast TPO, and the Florida Office of Greenways and Trails. For some housekeeping, a friendly reminder, everyone is muted. Please use the chat box to the upper right of your screen to ask any questions. Questions will be taken at the end of the presentation, and today's conference is being recorded. With that, Vaughn, are you with us?
Yes.
Perfect. I'm going to send you over controls of the screen.
All right. Just let me know if y'all can see my screen and I can get started.
Yep, we see it. The floor is yours.
Okay, great. So thank you so much for having me. My name is Vaughn Tron. I'm the Community Outreach Manager for the Florida Trail Association. So today I'm going to be speaking with you about some of our social media outreach strategies. But first, we'll start off by kind of explaining a bit more about the FTA and the Florida Trail. So this is pretty much everything that I'm already covering. So we're going to kind of discuss what a National Scenic Trail is, what specifically the Florida Trail or the Florida National Scenic Trail is, what we do as an organization, ways that folks can get involved, and then the outreach goals and strategies that we have in place and some of the publishing platforms and resources that have been incredibly helpful to me in our communications and outreach. So the Florida Trail is a part of the National Scenic Trail family, which is a network of federally designated and protected trails throughout the country. Some major ones that I'm sure many of you are familiar with are the Appalachian Trail, Continental Divide, and the Pacific Crest Trail. And aside from Wisconsin and Arizona, Florida is one of the only state-based National Scenic Trails. And so the Florida Trail is 1,500 miles long. Actually, I'm going to use this neat little laser pointer here. So the southern terminus is down in the Everglades, or Big Cypress National Preserve, and it runs 1,500 miles through the state of Florida, and the northern terminus is in Pensacola, or in Gulf Islands National Seashore. And so we're flanked by 2 national park lands, but the Florida Trail itself is a mosaic of public and private land management. We have multiple state parks, state forests, national forests, and even public lands that the trail runs through. And part of it being federally designated as a National Scenic Trail is to highlight many of its qualities and how it serves as a major resource to our state, both with the scenic, natural, historic, and cultural qualities. And we are administered by the U.S. Forest Service, and so the Florida Trail Association is partner in administration with the Forest Service. Oh, I think my pointer has not allowed me to move on to another slide. Uh-oh. I'm sorry. Let me just...
to click your space bar or your arrow button.
Okay, here we are. I'm not using that pointer anymore. Okay, so the history of the Florida Trail Association. The first place was painted in the Ocala National Forest. You can see here the plaque for that. That was essentially the southern section of the Ocala National Forest near Clearwater Lake. So it started in 1966 by Jim Kern, the founder, and a group of other hiker friends. And over time, the Florida Trail became more established and then was federally designated and officially recognized as a National Scenic Trail in 1983. If you are ever hiking and happen to come across an orange blaze, then you have most likely come across the Florida Trail. The Florida Trail is within an hour's drive for most residents in Florida. It's extremely accessible, and our markers are these orange blazes. And to the right here is just an example of how you would designate turns on the trail. And so our amazing trail stewards each season work to clear this corridor so that it's passable and accessible, and then also update these orange markers or blazes for helping to guide our hikers along the trail. An amazing asset about the trail is all of the natural qualities, and the Florida Trail runs through every diverse, iconic landscape you can imagine of wild Florida, anywhere from pine forests to oak hammocks, river walks like the Swanee River. You've got some swamp walkings as you experience in Big Cypress and parts of Apalachicola National Forest. It's just a little bit of everything. And what's wonderful about the Florida Trail is that since we're a conglomerate of public and private land management, which includes land easements, really the Florida Trail is representative of perhaps what's the remaining wild and green corridor that we have in Florida, and also essentially, hopefully, is also a corridor for wildlife to pass through as well. And so the trail is representative of a major conservation effort, and the goal of it is to make it an accessible footpath for people to really enjoy wild Florida. And so our organization, the Florida Trail Association, our headquarters are based in the center of the state in Gainesville, and our mission is developing, maintaining, protecting, and promoting a network of hiking trails throughout the state, including the Florida National Scenic Trail. And together with our partners, we provide opportunities for the public to hike, engage in outdoor recreation, participate in environmental education, and contribute to meaningful volunteer work. So I know that's a mouthful, we do a lot, but our main effort is maintaining this 1,500-mile trail, especially in Florida, which is essentially just a lot of mowing and landscaping and cutting back of green brush that grows every season. We are organized in 19 different volunteer chapters that are based on counties, as you can see on the right. And so when folks become members with us, they become locally involved through their respective local county-based chapter. And then we also host statewide events through our staff. So we have what's called staff-supported work parties, where we partner with our FTA chapters in hosting maintenance events. And also we have special events such as tabling or fundraisers. There's many different aspects that folks can get involved with us. But yes, the bulk of our work is trail maintenance, and our trail is maintained entirely by volunteers. You can imagine that with a small staff of 5, we couldn't possibly manage this 1,500 miles alone. So we typically have, and it's a growing number, 500 active volunteers throughout the state. And there are even volunteers who are from other parts of the country and world who will join in our effort to maintain this trail that we are working so actively to make accessible. So one of our major goals, we have a 5-year strategic plan, and one of our goals is promote connections. And that is to connect citizens with the natural and cultural heritage of Florida through increasing awareness, use, and protection of the Florida Trail. So this is where I'm going to get more into detail about our social media campaigns and our methods for promoting stronger connections for folks to the Florida Trail. So in that strategic plan, our major performance measure is to increase the number and diversity of FT recreationists by 15% over 5 years. But really the long-term outcome is to make the trail widely valued as a means for connecting people with the nationally significant resources of Florida. And the Florida Trail, as I've kind of gone through so far is really emblematic of so much rich culture, natural ecology, and history that's representative of what makes Florida unique. A part of this goal to promote connections is really engaging diversity in the outdoors. And I'm sure y'all can read this, but really, as we all know, across the country, there are very low participation rates of minority groups in industries, including outdoor recreation. And we are working to change that. As we all know, the Florida Trail is incredible. I mean, the state of Florida is incredibly diverse, but really based on our demographic statistics and some of our studies that we've done, the racial and ethnic minority groups represent less than 5% of total recreationists on the Florida Trail. So we are really working to change that. And why does it matter? It matters because by engaging ethnically and racially diverse audiences, we are allowing for broader relevancy and securing essential future stewardship of public lands from all perspectives and all walks of life. And really, this is an important matter in many facets of industries and just our day-to-day lives. And we're trying to really join in the movement to establish a more diverse and inclusive community, if not on our Florida Trail and in our organization, but just of outdoor recreationists in general. And so some of our methods for engaging new and non-traditional users is just really building partnerships. That's just so key, is just starting that deep level of engagement and conversation about what our organization represents, what we do, and making sure that other communities feel like they can be fully included and involved in our decisions and also in our representation and in our efforts. And so through building partnerships, we partner with diverse organizations, providing educational inclusive opportunities for both maintenance work and recreation on the Florida Trail. We host collaborative events where we invite many of our partner groups to table with us or even speak to the audience and provide insight on their efforts and their individual backstory. And then through social media, that's a really strong component that we use as a platform for storytelling and capturing these efforts of these individual organizations that we're collaborating with. So these are some examples of groups that we've worked with over the years: Girls Who Hike Florida, Outdoor Afro, Groundwork Jacksonville, Latinx Hikers, and recently Wild East Women. So as you know, since the Florida Trail Association is based on maintenance, really the key is to get these groups involved in the stewardship of the Florida Trail. And when you begin with stewardship, then you're really building those stronger connections for folks to feel that they can actively enjoy and feel safe and welcome and included in the community of recreationists on our trails and in our outdoor spaces. So these are some work parties that we've hosted over the years. It varies from specific affinity groups to student groups, youth groups, and many groups that are already self-organized through Meetup. So as you can see, I'm sharing these wonderful photos from these work parties, but I'm kind of going to get more into the ethics of capturing the stories of people without having them feel tokenized. We want every individual that we work with to feel like they're part of the Florida Trail narrative. And by doing so, we try to directly capture their voices and how they would like to be represented, not just a vessel for us to use on our platform. So rather than just having a photo of Outdoor Afro, we really make it a point to share posts by Outdoor Afro, share direct quotes by our volunteers from that group, and some of the efforts that are happening locally that they're organizing. And then and just making sure that their voices are fully heard and not just tokenized or used, and as well as their image. And so an example of how we work to increase representation in the outdoors through our social media, we recently partnered with the Appalachian Trail Conservancy to establish a position called the Latinx Partnership Coordinator. And we've I've been so lucky to work with this woman on the left, Luz Latuma. She is one of the founders of Latinx Hikers, and she is helping us to enhance our involvement with more Latinx affinity groups throughout Florida, and to build greater stewardship of the Florida Trail with these groups. And also, a part of that initiative is with the Appalachian Trail, they established an initiative called Wild East Women, and it's a representation of female stewardship on national scenic trails along the East Coast. And so through Luz, we've been doing features of some of our female stewards on the Florida Trail, and weekly spotlights of these women. And so you can see here that the hashtag we use to link to this group is Wild East Women. I've kind of incorporated it with every other Wednesday as Wild East Women Wednesday. I'm a big fan of alliteration. It's very effective. And I think that it's something that folks can look forward to. And so these are some examples of some of the spotlight features we've had. So along with this catchy graphic, which I've been able to repeat the same logos between the Wild East Women logo and our Florida Trail logo, we're able to also capture the groups that these individuals have started or are founders of and organizers of. And then accompanying that are these, and I don't have an example on here, but direct quotes and just from their interview, and capturing every element of their background with hiking to their experience volunteering with the Florida Trail and other trails, and encouraging words for folks who are interested in getting involved. And so those are kind of tiers for really engaging audiences via social media, is really personalizing it through a descriptive and eye-catching graphic where you can really feel familiarity with this individual, but really quoting them directly and phrasing things in such a way that it is inclusive language, and it really allows people to feel a connection to our trail and a desire to participate. Some of the resources that I use often are Canva and Repost. So I really, as we all know, there's a lot of cross-posting that happens online, and we really put into practice appropriately tagging and crediting anyone who has original photos and artwork, or even an original post, and even if we're adding on to their posts. So I really enjoy using Repost as a simple app, and what it does is if the account is not private and it's public, it will put this label on a corner of the picture, and you can choose which corner you want to designate that, but at least that automatically, as it appears on your social media, you'll see that logo that it was reposted from that original account. And it will also copy and paste the text from that account. So in this example, we not only added to the text that was provided originally by Florida State Parks, but we added it to one of our catchy alliterated hashtags that we do that are thematic throughout the week. So this one was Monday Musings, and it always has the attachment that's a repost. And another really effective tool for drawing audiences is really having a strong kind of inspiring quote so that really helps to build connections. And so in this one, for example, we're representing one of the major state parks that the Florida Trail runs through, is Kissimmee Prairie Preserve State Park. It's also a designated dark sky destination, which means that it's one of the best stargazing spots in the country. And so the quote that I used here is "Keep your eyes on the stars and your feet on the ground" by Theodore Roosevelt. And it just helps to have a takeaway. We don't, although our organization is focused primarily on the maintenance of the Florida Trail, all of that is to make this trail something that's a second home to our residents or people from all walks of life anywhere in the world. And so it's a balance of highlighting our maintenance and volunteer efforts, but also the true enjoyment of what it means to be out in these wilderness settings and enjoying the landscape of Florida and connecting to it. And so with that, sometimes it's very effective to have a graphic paired with words. And so this has just completely changed my world. I went into this position without any sort of graphic design background. I actually was previously an organic farmer, and so I really had to learn a lot of tech things. And I hope I'm not alone in that some Adobe programs or some graphic design programs are not as user-friendly as I'd like, but this website has completely changed my world and built up my confidence for developing graphics for our organization. So canva.com, it's both a free resource, and you can actually have more customizable templates and a greater variety of features if you do a very affordable monthly or annual membership with them. But this is just a screenshot of some designs that I've developed over time. And then a larger example is the one in this corner that's very relevant, is a message about our FTA response to the COVID-19 outbreak. So this one really, when it says please review the safety precautions listed below, then in the text of our post, we directed folks more to the language of how our organization is responding to this outbreak and some of our sanitation guidelines, and also provided links as well to our website where that's described in greater detail. But what's wonderful about this website too is that we're really trying to enhance the aesthetic and visual quality and consistency of our outreach materials. And so we've worked with graphic designers, professional graphic designers, to develop what's called a style guide. So we have very specific types of font and color that we use, and you can download and incorporate those specific styles into canva.com and use them consistently. So you can see some of the consistency in font and logos that I'm able to easily access through this platform and repeat. And kind of just getting back into the discussion of working with diverse groups and ensuring that inclusive experience for all program participants are honored and honors everyone's connection to trails. These are just a couple examples of groups that are available in the outdoor community that really are working to change the narrative and enhance that representation in the outdoors. There's a great website called diversifyoutdoors.com where you can see a lot of the direct contacts for these folks. Luz, our Latinx partnership coordinator, is among those represented on this website. But we really recommend checking out all the different ways that stories are being captured by these specific groups and individuals. And then also, just a side note, is Indigenous geotagging. So as we all know, Florida is rich with a lot of Native American history, and we are really working to make sure that we reference some of those original inhabitants or native lands. For example, the Everglades, our southern terminus, is prominent, originally Seminole land, and so we're continually developing greater language for kind of allowing for that broader relevance and incorporating some of the cultural and historical perspectives and legacies that exist in the same public lands that we enjoy today, and honoring that. And so another platform we use for publishing and also gathering analytics is Hootsuite. If you're not familiar with it, Hootsuite is a really great platform for streamlining all of your social media posting and even scheduling posts in advance, which are very helpful for me. I aim to post 5 days a week, and sometimes I can just sit down for a couple solid hours and schedule those in advance and just have that task done. So Hootsuite's fantastic for that, and some of the there's different tiers of memberships that you can receive through this platform, and we are of, I believe, the business level membership where it develops analytics for us, and it's very helpful. For example, as you can see on this graph, for us to track things like increased engagement of social media viewers and followers, and we can see that through a timeline. And so not trying to toot my own horn, but I'm very proud to share that in my time since July of 2017 with the organization, we've been able to quadruple our followers on Instagram. So we started with 5,000, and currently we're at 12,400 followers. And so it's wonderful to be able to see the effectiveness of your social media outreach, and I strongly recommend Hootsuite, and it's extremely user-friendly. And so the next couple of slides are just additional examples of some of the analytics that you can receive. So this one is following the increased fans that have started following our Florida Trail Association Facebook page. Also, it breaks down what that engagement type is. If it's a reaction, is for example, likes or whatnot on your posts, comments, or even shares, if that's through Facebook, and same with on Instagram, amount of likes. So that's just how engagements are broken down. And then I want to conclude with some additional ideas for how you can engage audiences on social media. Since we have kind of really started this strong effort to really include a lot of information on natural ecology. Obviously, that's relevant to the landscape and the experience of the Florida Trail. And also, it's really, it helps to inspire participation and relevance when you share knowledge. And so a couple of catchy themes or tags that we use is Wildlife Wednesday or Fun Fact Friday. So you can see on the right here, we recently posted this example of an adult and juvenile white ibis, and obviously giving credit to the original photographer that had sent this into us. But I am a proud Florida Master Naturalist. I was very happy to complete the Florida Master Naturalist program. So I've been really working to implement some of that fun knowledge that I've gained through that program into my work with the Florida Trail and into engaging a broader audience. And so we've had, I think that's been us sharing these relevant ecological facts about Florida landscapes and nature as it pertains to the trail has really built up our audience. There's also really great resources online. I recently discovered a number of websites that allow you to create a virtual crossword puzzle or even virtual puzzles. So especially in this time that more folks are spending time at home. I don't have this listed, but I think it's called imapuzzle.com. We've been taking photos that we have of the trail and making them into virtual puzzles for our community members to play with and solve from at home. And this one's a crossword puzzle, so I incorporated it with some Florida Master Naturalist knowledge. And it's actually, I've received feedback that it's quite challenging, and many folks learn some new terms. And so you can check all of that out on our website at floridatrail.org. And yes, so I'm going to pass it on to Abby, but this is my contact information that you are welcome to write down. And please reference our website at floridatrail.org. There's a lot more information you can find about what we do and the communities that we're involved with.
Thank you so much, Vaughn. That was a great presentation full of all kinds of awesome info. Abby, are you out there with us?
I am. I'm here.
All right, I'm going to send you controls now.
Perfect. Okay. Good morning, everyone. It's so strange to not be face-to-face, but I'm really glad that we were able to do this in a webinar format. My name is Abby Hemingway, and I'm the Public Involvement Officer with the Space Coast Transportation Planning Organization. And thank you so much, Vaughn, for your amazing presentation. It was so great to work with you on this. I love that Vaughn talked about a lot of resources that we can use for social media. And my presentation is going to focus a little bit more on strategic planning for social media content. And then I'll show you some examples, trail related, that we will get to at the very end of the presentation to kind of spark your creative juices. So just first and foremost, I just kind of want to give a little background information about who I am and what the Space Coast TPO does. So the Space Coast TPO, Transportation Planning Organization for Brevard County, we're the Space Coast. We're governed by federal and state law, and it is a mandate that areas with more than 50,000 people in them must have a transportation planning organization to spend federal transportation funds. So our TPO looks at the big picture of transportation planning. We assist municipalities and modes of transportation such as airports, spaceport. Brevard is very different. We're one of the only counties who has a spaceport, an actual port of call where we have our cruise ships go out of. We have our airport. We have lots of things going on here on the Space Coast. So it's a lot of coordination, a lot of communication. Our staff is comprised of 9 people, so we're a small staff. Like Vaughn, she has a small staff there too, but we know that small staffs got a lot of good work out there. So I just wanted to share a little bit about the TPO. It's most likely that your county has a transportation planning organization. Sometimes they're referred to as metropolitan planning organizations as well. And I have been doing social media management for about 5 years, not only with the TPO. Before the TPO, I was with the Brevard County School District, and that's kind of where I started wearing my social media hat. And I think a lot of us don't, this isn't our expertise, it's another hat that we wear, and it's kind of a learning process as we go. So, you know, as public agencies, I really think that engaging with our online citizens can be difficult. Many citizens have preconceived ideas about public and nonprofit agencies, and which can sometimes put us in between a rock and a hard place. Sometimes we're not sure where to begin with social media, but regardless of our personal feelings about social media sites, there's no denying the power that they give to the general public. Social media sites have become a new space where citizens can voice their opinion, share their input, and connect with others. And we know that really a lot of conversations are happening behind the scenes on social media networks. So just to give you some perspective, according to Statista, in 2018, Facebook was the most popular social networking site, drawing in 2.23 billion monthly active users, which is just bonkers. YouTube ranked in at number 2 with 1.9 billion monthly active users, and then Twitter came in last. The point being is, regardless if your organization is on social media or not, the chances are people are already having a conversation about your organization, what you're doing, any projects that you have out there. They're probably posting about it or tweeting about it. So it's our job as social media managers and communications professionals as well, maybe outreach coordinators, to steer that conversation and to lead it in the right direction in order to tell our story. So social media strategy. When telling our story on social media, we have to be strategic. It's not enough just to post whatever we think an audience might like. We have to ensure that the content that we're sharing, it's relevant and it's meaningful. Before we get into content planning though, we have to recognize some of the biggest pitfalls of social media. We need to identify how we're going to tell our story and how we develop a strategy to share our messages. So I just wanted to put this up here. I think the best conversations happen when we ask questions. And I remember when I first started doing social media, one of my bosses said to me, the biggest important question that you can ask yourself when you're posting something on social media is why? Why are we posting this? Why is it relevant? Why will people care about this? So all these questions are relative when we're thinking about how to best use social media platform, thinking about our resources, how can we use our tools, who's our audience, what's the objective of this message. This is really, really important when you're trying to put content up. Some people take social media lightly, thinking that you can throw something at a wall and it will stick. And it's really about strategy, and that's how you build your following. It's how you spread your message, get a farther reach. So we're going to talk a little bit about these different aspects of social media. So biggest social media pitfalls. There are a lot, but I think it basically comes down to these two, which is missing the message target and lack of audience engagement. So before we can even talk about strategy, it's really important to talk about these pitfalls. One of the biggest mistakes is assuming that any information you share is sufficient to build and grow your audience, AKA let's throw that mud at the wall and see if it sticks. Making posts and tweets means nothing unless your audience is interacting with the content. Another pitfall in using social media as a communication platform is lack of audience engagement. So we know some organizations, turn off those comment features, which is a big no-no with social media. We know that some entities may not make posts on their social media. They might just do it infrequently. Social media is all about interaction. It's making sure it's so vital to respond to your your audience. It's so vital to interact with your audience and make sure that they're getting answers to the questions that they want to know. Maybe these aren't your specific pitfalls, but perhaps you have different areas of opportunity. No matter the pitfall, before you develop a strategy to remedy the situation, you need some goals. So we're going to talk about that next. So your goals might be a little different, but these are some basic goals if you're starting out in social media. So we have creating targeted messages, earning more likes and followers. Maybe you're just starting out in social media, joining the conversation, getting people to talk about your agency or your organization, building your brand to be recognizable, and to develop strategies to broaden your audience reach. So these are some attainable goals, and I'll show you some examples of what you can do to maybe reach these goals. I know as a public agency for the TPO, there are a few of these that really hit home for us. Some people mix us up half the time with transit, or they're not really sure of who we are and what we do. So it's your goal on social media is to tell your story about your agency and who you are. So this kind of goes hand in hand. After you have developed goals, then you need to develop some strategies. So this is kind of an outline of what you could do. So first step I always feel like is, who are we trying to reach? So you can see here we have little different messages for your audience. What do we do to create informational and engaging posts to broaden our reach? What can we do to get where do we get our content from? If we're not being told by our supervisors what to post, how do we come up with our own organic posts, is what it's normally called? How do we monitor our social media accounts? And then how do you implement a budget? I'm not going to go too into detail today about a budget, but these are just some common strategies when you're thinking about social media and making sure that you're trying to get a larger reach and having a successful brand, really. So one of the biggest things I think is knowing your audience. I know there's lots of different people on here today, so I think you really have to get into the nitty-gritty of who are you trying to reach. And a lot of the times you can look into demographics of who's interacting with your posts. So I just wanted to kind of give you an example. This is just for the TPO. So you might have different demographics, but if you have a Facebook account, for example, there are actual insights that you can look into on the back end as a user to see what your demographic range is like. So you can see here our demographic for the TPO. Interestingly enough, it's more women, which that's typical on Facebook, especially women who are normally mid-range in life. They tend to use Facebook a little bit more. You can see the age here, and then what their interests are. So I think having demographics, it's going to really help you create your content. So building your audience and reach, I think this is huge. I think it's really hard when you're first starting out to know, how can I get more followers? How can I get more likes? I see the same 10 people liking each post that I put out there. How can we build on this? So these are just 3 steps that I think really help when you're trying to build that reach. So making sure, number 1, that you interact with your audience. I think that's a really big one. Responding to comments, tweets, the more content that you interact with someone, it could show up on one of their friends' feeds. So the algorithms sometimes on Facebook and Twitter, I'm sure this has happened to you just in looking at your own feed, you see something that maybe somebody commented on or somebody liked, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. So just simple things with responding with like, thanks for liking this, or thanks for sharing your thoughts with your commenters is really important. And then building your network is huge. I think this is probably one of the biggest successes that the TPO has had. So building your network looks like making sure that you're partnering with local agencies, or maybe regional, it doesn't have to always be local, whether it's government, nonprofit, private, public, whatever have you. It's really important that you get to know your local people who are putting out communications and messages. So as an example, in Brevard County, we have a local group called the Public Information Network, and it is comprised of communications managers, social media managers, public information officers, people who are responsible for getting the message out there. And it's so important that we're all on the same page with, a pandemic such as COVID, or when we have hurricanes. It's been a really great resource as a communications person to rely on others to help share our messages. So I would just encourage you to make sure you're reaching out to people who are like you, who are putting out communications and messages. It's so important. And if you're really interested in that, I'd be more than happy to help you maybe find either your local PIN group, PIO group, or the best thing you can do is, if you're looking for somebody to partner with, is to actually look into their agency, see who their communications person is, and just do a personal reach out with an email. That's a lot of the times that's all it takes. And then thirdly, making sure, as Vaughn mentioned, utilizing some great media tools. So photos, infographics, video, it's all relevant. So I just wanted to give you an example of a successful post reach example. So here, by building on relationships with other PIOs or social media managers from other agencies, you can see how much reach you can have. So this was actually an example that I'll touch on in a little bit about, we did a huge trail campaign to showcase our 5 showcase trails, and it was a great success. I'll go into it in a little bit, but as you can see here in this Facebook post, there were 34 shares, where there's no way that would have happened without our partners. So you can see how many people we tagged in this post. So if you see the light blue, that means that we actually tagged agencies that we partnered with, or just giving them a shout out so that they could share it on their own page. I can't underestimate enough how important it is to use tags. Hashtags are great. They're not as effective, I think, on Facebook. So making sure that you tag any agencies that you think are relevant to that post, it's huge. Another tidbit that I just like to throw out there, if you're trying to gain any followers, I just learned this in the last couple of years. So another toot my own horn, I love this little trick, is that if you find anyone liking or loving or reacting to your post, you can click on that number and you can see who follows you. And if they don't, it will say invite. It's one of my favorite tools. All you hit is invite to like, and I can't tell you the number of people that I have gotten to subscribe to our page basically off of that little tool feature. So hopefully, if you take nothing away from this presentation, that's a little tool that you can walk away with. I really like that feature. It's relevant, it's timely, and it lets the person immediately keep up with what your agency is doing. So next, we're just going to talk about quickly a content plan and how that works. So I think people, again, like I said, sometimes try to throw up information on social media, and what happens is it gets lost, right? There's so much happening, whether it's on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, there's so much information. Sometimes it gets lost in the cycle of things. So making sure that you actually have a plan of when and how to post is really important. So I kind of like to say, now we're answering the why. Why do we need to engage on social media? Why is it vital to respond to comments? And why are we posting this? Answering the why is really the first step in telling our story and developing the strategy. So now it's kind of, what content are we going to create? And I think that these are the 3 main areas that I would say, these are the 3 main reasons of why we're posting something. It's either to inform the public, engage with our audience, or to entertain our followers. So we all know those types of different posts where we're trying to just put up information, or if we're really trying to entertain our audience. So for today's discussion, I'm just going to show you some quick examples of some trail posts that we've shared over the years to give you a better idea about what these look like. Okay, so this is on Facebook, and I thought I'd use a relevant post, timely post from a couple weeks ago. kind of promoting a different summit event. So you can see here, the one on the left is really informing the public. It's saying, hey, don't miss this great opportunity. It's coming up. Whereas the one on the right is kind of doing the kitschy little cute, happy first day of summer. We hope we see you out on one of our trails. It's different. The right one is really trying to engage your audience with all these different photos of some beautiful trails happening and really kind of trying to spark their energy and their response to this. Whereas the one on the left is really giving people information. And now here's a Twitter example. So once again, the one on the left is more about giving information, and the one on the right is really more engagement. And you can see just even in the reactions in these two, the one on the right got way more retweets and likes versus the left, which doesn't really have anything to do really with the pictures or anything like that, but it's more about the content and the aim of the message. It's all about the message. The next thing I just wanted to briefly talk about is the content sharing plan. I think this is really important if you're a social media manager to have a content plan for social media. Like I said before, it's really crucial. This is another crucial element, the amount of engagement that you'll receive from the public on your posts. Most of the social media tools that you're already using will actually tell you the best day of the week and time to distribute your posts. Again, it's kind of on your insights and analytics back end. You know your audience best, but the best rule of thumb is that Twitter is great for live events. I'm sure you guys have seen this. We know the news media uses Twitter happening right now, breaking news. So I would encourage you, Twitter is great to put out information, but make sure it's timely. I always try to use it when we're doing live events, posting live pictures happening right then. It's a little harder to do that on Facebook, and it starts to become redundant if you keep seeing the same post over and over again. But on Twitter, it's kind of accepted knowledge that that's what it's used for. And so this is just a little bit of an outline of what the TPO does as far as content sharing plan. Maybe it might look different for you, but I just think it's something that you should think about when you're beginning to develop, your messages and your social media plan. So where do we get our content from? I think this is a big question for us. Sometimes we wake up in the day and we're like, okay, what should we post today? In addition to the information that you're told to share from either your supervisors, maybe it's your local partners, there are additional resources out there to really help fill the content gaps of your social media platforms. So these are just specific ones to the TPO that we use. If you're a trail organization, I'm sure they have similar things out there. If you're a health organization, there are so many different content calendars. Because social media is becoming such a widely profession, really, it's becoming a profession for people. There are so many tools out there. So I really encourage you to look for content calendars in your specific area that your organization resides in. For us, we put out a lot of transportation things, but we also highlight traffic safety. So these are some resources that we use. And also, major holidays, national days and months, which I'm about to end this presentation with talking about National Trails Month, which is in June. So we're almost there. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So I just think it's really important to make sure that you kind of key into some other content that's out there that might be relevant to your organization. So the next thing is making sure that you have a social media calendar. I know this seems silly, but I can't tell you the number of times that this has saved me. On my Outlook, I have a separate calendar, and that is used just for social media planning purposes. I usually color coordinate it to, because I'm OCD, I usually color coordinate it to differentiate between the week, month, or day events. And this has just really helped me streamline my social media planning for the week. I can go in and see, oh my gosh, it's Bicycle Safety Month. Let me make sure I get out a message today about, how appropriate ways to fit a helmet. It's just really great. So making sure you're taking the content that we just talked about, maybe additional content sources, and then adding them to whatever you must post for your organization. So this is just a helpful thing that I have found that really helps me streamline my posts. Okay, so to end my presentation, I just wanted to show you, now we have all this information about social media. How do we create a successful campaign? So now is where we really need to key in and focus on how to develop the message and the media, use our partnerships that we've created, and to engage with our followers or our commenters. So how do we do that? Well, the first thing is we have to find a campaign partner. So hopefully by now you have kind of keyed into your communications groups or your local public involvement people who might work for cities or other public agencies, and you can join them and maybe launching a campaign, and I'll show you what we did here in a minute. Then you need to determine what the message will be. Is it going to be formal or informal? What's the goal of this campaign? And then what type of media are we going to use? Are we going to use video, images, infographics? So this is just a bird's eye view. Here's the more in-depth version. And this is just an example, again, of what the TPO has done. This might look different for your agency, but a social media launch, a campaign launch that's going to be long or extensive, or it's going to involve a lot of people, you want to make sure that you plan for it and that it's not last minute, it doesn't get thrown up there. So this is just a little bit of an outline of what that looks like on a planning level. So maybe you first set up a face-to-face or conference call meeting to develop, what's the campaign's goal? Why do we want to get together and put out this message? What's the ultimate goal? And then you want to make sure you have a drop date, a deadline. Then you want to make sure you establish everyone's role, schedule a time to look up graphics, use Canva or create something, or if you need to go get video footage. It's really important that you backlog this time so that you can plan appropriately so that everything is seamless when you go to post. And then creating a little short content calendar. How many posts are we going to do? What days, what times? And then notifying your partners about those posts. You can either share direct links if you're the original poster, or you can tag the agencies and partners. And then most importantly, evaluate how well you did. So I'm just going to give you an example here. Oh, pop up. Oh, there you go. Okay, so here was our example of in June 2018, we decided to do a National Trails Month campaign, and I'm sorry, June 2019, we launched this social media campaign that we had actually worked on for almost a year. Sarah Crom, the multimodal specialist for the TPO, and she came to me with this idea of Trails Month, and we really wanted to showcase our 5 trails. A lot of people in Brevard didn't know that we even had trails. These beautiful, linear trails that exist. They had no idea that they were out there. So we thought, how could we really showcase them in a beautiful way? So we partnered with Brevard County Parks and Recreation, which this agency is the maintaining agency for a lot of these trails, and they helped get them up and running, so to speak. We partnered with them and Space Coast Government Television to film, edit, and produce 5 videos to promote our showcase trails. We implemented the planning techniques that I just mentioned to you, and we plan to promote 1 trail per week during the month of June, selecting Tuesday as our day to coincide with the cute hashtag Trail Tuesday. The TPO was the primary poster, and then we tagged the accompanying agencies. Not only did we see a gain in comments, likes, and shares, but we also had a wider reach by using video. And we all know that video just draws people in. I'm one of them for sure. I know that I watch videos and probably read the captions. I don't even need the volume on it. Read the captions like crazy rather than static images. So just knowing what's going to capture your audience. And you can see here, just by these 2 trails that we posted, the number of people that it reached. And then lastly, I just wanted to talk about analytics. And I know that Vaughn touched on this. So we have all these amazing media tools. Now, what do? It's not enough just to make posts sometimes and respond to comments or retweet something. As social media managers, we must measure the effectiveness of the tools we use to communicate to our citizens and to the public. So this is just a little comparison. These numbers have drastically changed, but I just wanted to show you the difference between metrics in 1 year. As you can see here for the TPO, there was a huge increase in Facebook reach and Twitter impressions. in 2018 versus 2017. But I just wanted you to see this because statistics and metrics change as we utilize new tools. Or we had certain projects during a specific year. So for example, you can see that we actually had more YouTube views in 2017, but that's because that year we had a huge campaign to educate citizens on a new diverging diamond roadway that was happening in Brevard. And then additionally, we added a new social media channel in 2018 Nextdoor. So we acquired new impressions there. So this is just really to show you that even though the goal is to ultimately increase reach of your message and to build your audience, numbers are very fluid. So just keeping in mind, you know, if you don't reach your goal of, oh, I really wanted to reach this many followers this year, that's okay. Don't give up. Make sure that you keep planning your messages accordingly, and the numbers are always going to be a little bit fluid. This is just a glimpse at where we stand now for the TPO for our social media channels. We're always striving to increase these numbers. Transportation planning is not as sexy as a beautiful trails that we can post on Instagram. I really give Vaughn props for that. That is amazing that they have that following on Instagram. I love it. But you know, we're really proud of where we stand for transportation planning, and we love Nextdoor. Nextdoor has been a huge asset to our organization. And this is just a plug that if you're a public agency, they do have Nextdoor for public agencies right now. So I can send you that information if you're interested, but it's been a great resource to help push some of our projects and our open houses out on. And then this is just a little plug. If you wanted to take a look at the types of content that we produce on our outlets, they're all listed here apart from Nextdoor because that's a local platform. But this is just a little bit what I wanted to share. Here's my contact information. It's been a pleasure to be here with you all today, and hang in there. We're almost through this.
Thank you, Abby. At this time, we'd like to open up. Does anyone have any questions? I don't see anything in the chat box. We have some comments that while we're thinking of questions, I'll just go ahead and read out loud. Linda Brandt says, excellent presentation and presenter, important messages about diverse perspectives, trail focused, affinity groups, and partnership building. Thank you. Hannah Reynolds says, a note for Canva, you can also get the paid features for free as a 401c3 nonprofit. It's an excellent graphic design tool. Vaughn says, yes, so helpful to mention content sharing plan and pertinent time frame and timelines for effective posting. Linda Brandt again says, Abby, love the reminder to notify key partners of your campaign posting timing and strategy so they can prepare too and be ready to engage and support. So helpful. Question from Alyssa Garcia. Abby, when working with volunteers on social media, do you have any tricks on keeping an accurate timeline?
You mean on keeping an accurate timeline as far as like making sure that posts are going out on time?
Alyssa, if you want to unmute yourself and go ahead and elaborate, or she says yes. Excuse me.
So I would say that making sure it's always kind of good to give yourself some wiggle room just in case somebody forgets or maybe something crazy happens that day. You know, we all have those days. You know, we have the media calling us or something like that happens. I would always say give yourself a little bit of wiggle room, but I would definitely make sure that you hold that person accountable. I know it's hard sometimes that we have volunteers that are doing social media, and sometimes their schedules might look different than ours, but I would make sure if it's really important to get out that something that I always do is I put a calendar reminder that might be helpful. So I'm not sure if there's any joint email platform that you use that might have a calendar. You could do Google reminders, you could do an Outlook reminder. That's something that's kind of always helped me if I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to get this out today, but you know, you're running a mile a minute. So maybe having something like that, that it's something visual that pops up and says, hey, we need to get this done. that kind of always helps me, having a little visual in front of me to making sure that I accomplish something.
Awesome, thank you. Does anyone else have any questions? All right, well, thank you to our presenters for taking the time to give your amazing presentations today and for all of the continued work, effort, and support that you put into the loop and trails. Once again, we'd like to recognize our sponsors, the City of Titusville, Playland Brewing Company, Florida American Planning Association Atlantic Coast Section, Titus Landing, Lisa Mosier with Caldwell Banker Coast Realty, Wild Ocean Market, Bike Florida, Days Inn by Wyndham, Caldwell Banker Coast Realty, Titusville Area Chamber of Commerce, St. John's River to Sea Loop Alliance, Space Coast TPO, and the Florida Office of Greenways and Trails. Next week will be our very last presentation, Thursday the 28th at 10 a.m., and it will be a Trail Town Spotlight featuring updates from the cities of Palatka, Clermont, and Deltona. Thanks again for joining us today, and we hope everyone has a great rest of your week and that we see you next week right back here.
And Aaron, you did